Hello, everybody. How you doing? Good? Great. Yay. Good. Yay. Yay. Good. I'm glad. I want to know that you're doing well, and I hope everyone is doing well. And I think you're making a choice tonight that points towards wellness, and that you've come to a poetry reading on a Thursday night in Tucson. And so I commend you for excellent choices. And I hope that you'll consider coming back again for more and more. And I'll tell you more about some things that are coming up at the Poetry Center in a second. My name's Tyler, and I work here as the director at the Poetry Center. Is this your first time to the Poetry Center? Good work. Yeah, great. This is me giving you all a high five. I hope you feel welcome. I hope you'll think of this as a place that you can keep returning to. There's an amazing spring with a lot of things coming up. And we hope that you'll be back with us again. It won't always be this cold, if you're cold. I know. I realize one of our readers is from Alaska. Annie's traveled from Alaska, and so we're not impressing Annie right now with our cold tolerance. Coming up next week at the center, there's a reading, and it's our annual Morgan Lucas Schultz Memorial Reading. And the two poets that are going to be here for that are the poet Susan Nguyen, who's coming down from Phoenix, behind her first book and her work with Hayden's Ferry Review at Arizona State University. And then the poet Andrew Grace, who's going to travel here from Ohio and read from his latest book about the Midwest. And we're thrilled to have both of those poets here. That's back here in this space at the Poetry Center at 7 o'clock on Thursday of next week. Coming up on Saturday, March 7th, we have the state finals for Arizona for Poetry Out Loud. And so this is a contest where high school students memorize poems and then say them out loud in a kind but competitive format. And so there's classroom winners and then school winners and regional winners. And so what we're determining on the 7th is the state winners from the southern, central, and northern regions. So we'll have students from all over Arizona here in Tucson. If you're worried about the state of the world, hearing young people say poems that they've put in their brains and can do without looking at anything is a sign of order in the world. And so that's at 1 o'clock. And if you want to come cheer them on, I know that they would be excited to see you in the crowd. And it's a fun thing to be a part of. After that, there's a little bit of a break at the Poetry Center, but there is this thing in Tucson called the Tucson Festival of Books, which is coming again, and that is large, and there's some amazing voices who are going to be here for that. If you've not seen the list yet, I encourage you to go look at some of the folks who are going to come for that. Writers like Salman Rushdie will be here, but also it will be a true laureate fest this year at the Book Festival, which is remarkable. So Arthur Z., the current U.S. Poet Laureate, will be here. Joy Harjo, a former U.S. Poet Laureate, will be here. Alberto Rios, the outgoing Arizona Poet Laureate, will be here, as well as Arizona's newly named Poet Laureate, Laura Tohi, will be here reading from her work. And then the newly named Tucson Poet Laureate, who we don't even know who that is yet, it's still in the process, will give one of their first readings at the Festival of Books as they're appointed by the mayor of Tucson. So lots going on. In addition and beyond those, there's more poets, more writers, many others. That's the 14th and 15th of March on the main mall of the U of A campus and in spaces around there. And so I encourage you to go online and look at those and see what's happening. It is my great pleasure to get out of the way now. But before I do that, I want to thank two folks that have helped make the events tonight possible. And so one is the Center for Middle Eastern Studies here on campus. We're grateful for their support of making events happen on campus. And then a huge kudos to our great friend Peggy Shoemaker, who's also helped make events happen around poetry in Tucson and in other places in the country. And we're incredibly grateful for that kindness and for that love and that care. Peggy is going to introduce our readers tonight. She is the author most recently of the wonderful poetry collection, Still Water Carving Light. Please help me welcome Peggy Shoemaker.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. Annie Wenstrup's ancestors are German, English, and Dena'ina. She comes from a long line of Dena'ina storytellers. She listens with care to the recordings of her grandfather, which were transcribed and published, to Sukdu and Sukdua, stories held in common and stories more personal. She listens to her mother and her aunts, who tell parts of the stories never recorded. She knows her children, Abby and Joseph, need every part of their stories. Annie's poems draw on traditions, on strengths and sorrows that are thousands of years old, still vibrant and growing. She's also a citizen of this moment, so her poems make room for Star Trek, for eating disorders, for being considered other, for being observed but not seen. During a museum sovereignty fellowship with the Smithsonian, Annie began thinking about the museum as a cultural construct. Then she considered the museum as a literary conceit and created a book that is a museum. Who decides what a museum holds? How are collections amassed? What is stolen? Who gets to curate? When putting together exhibits or encounters, who are the intended viewers? What do we teach them to see? What happens when only men get to speak? What happens when a museum appropriates, misrepresents, or erases events or people? With humor and outrage and great intelligence, Annie curates a collection that holds whole worlds. The Museum of Unnatural Histories, her first book, digs into experiences of Indigenous people, both women and men, as they reclaim the right to tell their stories as they see fit. Annie's work has earned an Alaska Literary Award, a Story Knife residency, a Whiting Award. She's been a fellow of the Indigenous Nations Poets Organization. She serves as senior editor for Poetry Northwest's Native Torchlight series. And right now she's editing a North American Indigenous poetry anthology forthcoming from Wesleyan. Please welcome Annie Wenstrup.
Thank you so much, Peggy. I have the joy of saying that Peggy is my first teacher and also the first person to make me cry before I read. So, thank you. Thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you so much, Paola, Claire, and Sarah for bringing me here and for being such wonderful hosts. This has been a magical day. I had the chance to tell someone earlier that the day that I spent at the Center for Poetry was what I thought being a poet would be like when I grew up. And so it's such a gift to be here with you all. Sukdua 2. Prologue. It's traditional to begin by telling you this. This was once Chada's Sukdu, and in the retelling, it becomes my Sukdua. For the unfamiliar, Sukdu is story. Sukdua is a story that's become a personal story. And I've decided that this is akin to how some people build familial homes. Oh, this? It's our ancestral family home. My greatest grandparents built it, and someone built on 10 additions, and another re-roofed and refloored it, while another stripped the interior to studs. Isn't it lovely? In this fictitious exchange, I imagine you are looking for what was once there. A rectangle of unfaded wallpaper, the pond painting, now rent. The movement from Sukdu to Sukdua necessitates change, an authorial reckoning with what remains. My initial imagining was wrong. This is not a house or rooms that I reorder. Here, I am moving towards scape land, mass land, place land, fall. No. Here I find myself in my timekeeping within it. That's not correct. Here. In March 1986, Augustine erupted. The main plume deposited 1.5 centimeters of ash atop Kenai, Alaska. Significant pyroclastic flow was noted by someone, I don't know who. The subsequent dome growth is comparable to pre-1883 heights. In 1883, the volcano's north side collapsed and triggered a tsunami. Scientists state the damage was minimal. Only a few vessels floated away. It's so nice to minimize loss whenever possible. The loss was related to the tides and their patterned diminishment. Thank goodness for low tide. I too would like permission to stop reaching. It's nice that the dome has reappeared. Here, what I'm trying to say is this: I've been absent collecting myself. No, what I've been trying to say is this. Chapter 1. So there's a figure in the next couple of poems, Gogoini, which is the Dena'ina raven. And Gogoini is both a trickster and a shapeshifter. And like me, Gogoini is a fan of forms. Most of the time, she lives in her true self, raven-feathered, sharp-eyed. Sometimes, like me, she becomes her grandmother's self, and I want to imagine that means that Gogoini is wiser. But the truth is, she's only a different version of herself. Bored one day, Gogoini flew aimlessly around Yaganen, the good land. It was like being a child again and looking for fireweed to uproot. She liked the joy of de-leafing the stem, the thrill of throwing the naked stalk like a spear. Far on the edges of Yaganen, Gogoini's eye saw dwelling in a shadow. Curious, she landed near it. She shook herself and became an old woman. She walked to the home, and half-human woman welcomed her in. There was no saying what big eyes or what big teeth you have between the two of them. Nor did Gogoini say anything about half-human's divisions. Instead, she took in the woman's doubleness. From one angle, half-human woman has a face like ours. The other, I imagine, looks like how I feel when I'm alone. When half-human woman took Gogoini inside, Gogoini told her, "I want you to be my baby. I'll swaddle you, I'll rock you, and I will call you my own." This is the not yet traditional part of the story. In the original, only Gogoini speaks her desire. But me, I'm listening for half-human woman. To belong to someone, her longing, her consent's silence. You weren't joking about it being dry. Chapter 2. Gogoini swaddled half-human woman. She rocked her and then pretended that half-human woman. My goodness, that's such a mouthful to say every time. Why don't we give her a nickname, something easier to say? We can call her Sally, something short and familiar. Gogoini pretended that Sally was a colicky baby. She pretended that Sally cried and was naughty. So traditionally speaking, the Sukdu does not tell us how Sally was imagined to be naughty. And perhaps it's better that way, because when Gogoini caws, "Bad baby, bad," and tosses the bundle over a ledge, each of us may project into the scene our own definitions of badness and goodness. Each of us can imagine our own misbehavior, bundle it, chuck it into an abyss. I understand this may be uncomfortable for you to name. Here is permission. You may pretend along with me. Chapter 4. After I ditched Not a Baby, I let myself into her home. That creature, the riches she accrued, smoked salmon, cloudberries preserved in sugar. It was permanently summer in her kitchen, and I wanted to stay forever. But her furniture prohibited permanence. On the lounge, I was comfortable enough as a little chuda or a grown gogoini, but it felt best when I caught myself between the two. I split and I slept in her den and dreamt disorderly dreams that were neither nightmare nor prophecy. They lacked sweetness and they were full of drownings. I woke. I tried to eat. The containers resisted my grip, and only my knife remained palmed. When she reappeared in the doorway, my knife slid below her sternum, as though I were a hunter field dressing an already cored animal. Perhaps I thought her body would become my cloak. More honestly, perhaps I was afraid. She laughed at me and pulled her hands away from what should have been a wound, and there was nothing there. She laughed again, and in my terror I asked, "What are you?" "Your people named me evil," she said, "but you came here, and you treated me well." Then she gestured at me. "Now back into whoever you really are." My wings ceased impersonating arms, and my tail plumed. I came back to myself and flew away. For weeks now, I wake in my nest, and I look at myself in the mirror. My wing waves in front of my face, and I tell myself, return to who you really are. But it must be a matter of feathers and intonation. I haven't mastered it yet. I know because my face remains, in spite of my beak, cawing. I have one last poem I'd like to read. It's very hard when people bring up the Star Trek poems to not read at least one. I do have to, while I look for my bookmark that I lost, tell you that when, after I sent in the final version of the book, I realized that at first the poems had spanned multiple different editions of Star Trek, so there was Voyager and Enterprise references. But then I did the editing, and only Voyager poems were in the book, but Enterprise was still the name of the ship in the Lost and Found section. And I have to tell people that depending on the audience so that they know I made a mistake. I know, there are many. Exhibit B, unfiled correspondence, stardate 2373. Dear Chakotay, simply I loved you like the captain loves you, in sidelong glances, in unreality. How could I not? You with your tattoo, a professional. You lost in light years away from home. And yet you believe your ancestors guide you. I've watched you close your eyes to contact your spirit guides. It was more intimate than a kiss. I wanted to learn to pray the same way. Oh, Chakotay, if you'd asked, I would have joined the Maquis to be with you. I would have left my sun and moon to follow you into uncharted space. I'd even adopt the doctrine of discovery for you. I'd imagined us standing on deck quoting Picard. I imagined us staring each other to boldly go where no one's gone before. I wanted to want you because you were a wanted Indian, someone I wanted to be. Chakotay, how my heart broke when I realized each night with your cold cream and your washcloth, you untattoo your face before you fall asleep, unreddened, unmarked. P.S. my heart, my red, red heart. Chinan, thank you.
Thank you so much, Annie. Lena Khalaf Tuffaha's literary ancestors include Mahmoud Darwish, June Jordan, Edward Said, Naomi Shihab Nye. Her love of writing began at her grandparents' house, in her grandmother's garden, and her grandfather's library. This was in Amman, where her grandfather was the poet laureate of Jordan. Her background is Palestinian, Jordanian, Syrian. That means that during every moment of her life, somebody she loves has lived in a war zone. How does a poet speak out against the deliberate obliteration of whole cities, whole cultures? Lena Khalaf Tuffaha shows us. She brings to her work the full range of human emotion, refusing to allow occupying forces to wipe out the humanity of any people. Her poems are as intricately crafted as traditional Palestinian embroidery. She's won many awards, and I'll mention one. Her newest book, Something About Living, won the National Book Award in poetry. That well-deserved recognition has allowed her voice to reach many, many readers at a crucial moment in history. Lena and her beloved Nassim have raised 3 daughters, Raya, Rima, and Renda, who are now brilliant young citizens of the world. She knows that not every parent has had that privilege. That is part of what makes Lena's poetry life-giving and essential. Please welcome Lena Khalaf Tuffaha.
Good evening, everyone. Masa al khair, in case there are Arabic speakers out there. Thank you to everyone at the Poetry Center for being just phenomenal hosts. This is really a special place that you've created. It's full of heart, and it's given me just some peace in a really turbulent time today. So thank you for sharing it with me. I'm going to do something different than I usually do, which is I'm going to start in my grandmother's garden, and then we'll get to the other things. Apricots. In Rome last summer, I learned that there are 7 varieties of apricots, that they are distinguished not only by their physical appearance, the freckles on their skin, or the percentage of it that reddens on the vine, but also by the month in which they ripen. Damascus, my grandmother's city, is known for the apricots of its Ghouta Valley, each name ending in a lingering E. Baladi, the original descendant of the ancients of China and the Korean peninsula. Or Klabi, the bitter Armeniaca vulgaris, hardy fruit of the eastern steppe. Or Mawardi, with its flirtatious name and promise of perfume. That long E of the possessive claims the apricot for the country, the animal wilderness, for water softened with roses. Last summer in Rome, turning the corner onto Piazza di Santa Maria, the clink of the morning's last cappuccino glasses and low growls of Vespas on the street gave no indication of the city I would travel to a few steps forward. I wasn't thinking of the jam-colored sunsets of Amman, the stone fruits and wedding music that filled my grandmother's garden, the serrated leaves of her apricot tree. Then a scent drifted up from the cobblestones, a thickness, a palpable haze of flesh beginning to spoil, of sugar turning in sunlight. In Amman, a tree like the one leaning on a wall in the piazza had reigned over our childhood. Baladi apricots like shattered lanterns, aglow at its base, darkening, gathering droves of ants, the ravenous taking. Not the perfume of Damascus mawardi, nor the silk handkerchief of blossoms, not the fruit's citrus kiss. It was the scent of spoiling, of too much sweetness that claimed me, long cry at the end of the ballad of old summers. In Amman, it is known that an apricot harvest can be ruined by untimely frost, and that, like Rome, the city is built on 7 hills. In 2018, Palestinians living in Gaza, over 80% of whom are already refugees from other parts of Palestine, decided that they were tired of waiting for the right of return. We talked this morning in class about the right of return being an individual human right that every refugee in the world has. So they were tired after decades and decades of waiting to go home and decided they would just get up and walk to the border, because in many cases, the ancestral villages and towns that these people are from are within walking distance. And that is described in the United States as nonviolent resistance. So Palestinians engaging in that nonviolent resistance in Gaza were met with Israeli sniper fire. And so for Friday after Friday, families would come and just walk to the border, and they would get shot at. And this went on for months. So this poem commemorates that time. Variations on a Last Chance. The fence does not hold. The wire sheds its barbs, softens to silk thread. The snipers run out of bullets. The desert, as it always has, of its own volition, blooms. The snipers are distracted, sexting their girlfriends. The snipers' eyes are blinded by smoke from our burning tires. The snipers wonder if they will ever see the end of us. The fence does not hold. The snipers take a lunch break. The bullets melt in their chambers. The bullets disintegrate when they reach the word press on Yasser's vest. The news finally breaks the stillness around us. The bullets will themselves away from the boy's skull. The boy's sandals sprout wings and he hovers above the bullet's path. The snipers lose interest in shooting at medics evacuating the wounded. The snipers make eye contact with one of us and see. There are enough saline bags at the hospital. The snipers shoot and miss, and miss, and miss. We outrun the snipers. We bury the dead at the fence, let their roots reach the other side of home. This poem is a cento, and it is composed entirely of lines by Mahmoud Darwish, translated into English. A single word, home. Denuded of my name, of belonging, childhood memories grow up in me, one day following another. In the deep horizon of my word, I have a moon, and it is as tiny as a sesame seed. I have learned all the words needed for a trial by blood. If I return one day, take me for a kindling in your fire. I am aged. A fog veils me. Facing the dusk and the cannon of time, the fields of wheat, the white graves. Free, I stand beside my freedom. I am known to all the songs of rain, all the prisons, all the borders. I must be worthy of my mother's tears. For my name I shall choose letters of azure, the birds that chased after my palms. What will we do before this death? We are dust's bygone neighbors. You who stand in the doorway, come in. To be self-evident, after Edward Said. Every empire tells its subjects a story of revelation. The trees let down their aging leaves, listless in late drought. The children thrive on filtration, their classroom air and their selfies sanitized. Every empire seems invincible as its borders submerge, its manicured hillsides incinerate between guaranteed next-day deliveries. Every empire eulogizes its value system, splurges for pyrotechnics, decorates its mausoleums for the holidays. Every empire turns against its colonies, cradling the embassy's crystal in bubble wrap, packing extra treats for the dogs on the evacuation flight home. Every empire promises a revolution against itself. The children are tasked with designing the future, growing walls of hydroponic greens, rebranding old protest anthems. Every empire denies the iceberg it crashes into, hires a chorus, funds the arts. Every empire sings itself a lullaby. Deciding. Let's see. I think sometimes for a little comic relief, we need to make fun of politicians. They make it so easy, so thank you, politicians. This particular one has retired. He shall not be named, but he shall be memorialized in this poem. I will just say that the title of the poem is the name of what some Palestinians say is our national dish. I can't say it is our national dish because that will start an actual war, but some Palestinians say ma'loube is our national dish. It's a dish made of rice and chicken and roasted eggplants and cauliflower, and it's cooked in a pot and then turned upside down, which is why the word ma'loube means upside down. So this is ma'loube. The congressman began his remarks to a room of refugees and their children who had invited him to share their national dish after the most recent massacre with, ultimately, then ran his tongue across his front teeth. There is a special relationship, then a slight twitch of his chin and increased activity all around his mouth. Look, and his left hand flew up like a shield as he jammed his pinky fingernail beneath his top lip and excavated the gum line. I get it, from behind his hand. Several of the elders leaned forward in their chairs to decipher his muffled pronouncements. Here's what I will say, emphasis on will, so that the room was now focused on what he wouldn't say. Then, finally, a moment of audible relief as the shard of almond was dislodged, restoring peace to canine and incisor. Gracious in victory, he placed it ever so gently in his palm. His words dropped off as he examined it, and for a moment it was just the congressman and the almond in the room. When an elder cleared his throat and snapped him out of his reverie, he looked up at his hosts, seated around the table, and at the collapsing dome of fragrant rice, eggplant, and chicken at its center, and he remembered to offer the traditional greeting. You and I can agree the best hope is to return to negotiations. They're funny, but also really depressing. Anyway, How are we doing on time? 2 more? Okay. 2 more poems. How to end. Okay. This is a poem that is a golden shovel. Some of you may know that a golden shovel is a poem that if you read down the poem, like the last word of each line, that is a line from another poem that is being quoted. Anyway, if you're interested later, come and I'll show you what this poem is doing on the page. Oops. And it's a golden shovel after one of my poetry heroes, Suhair Hamad. Slip shape. A hummingbird lavishes the lilac on the first morning I am by myself, and the open window ushers in decanted perfume, the sea, rain on the brink of falling. What slip-shape prayers a woman must make of her body. To write my way out of the stories of war, I wrote the war. Again and again I wrote its wounds. May arrives frenzied with questions. Whose children will we lose at the border? What use is it to remember what has never ended? To wax elegiac for how ardently we believed. This is not who we are becomes anthem and divine decree, armor against the living. Here we remain, human and failing in our florid excess, our national torpor. Beings so fragile we might break. Can we? Finally? And can we imagine what our new shapes might be? And I will close with my kind of love letter to June Jordan, my thank you letter to June Jordan, a poet who means a lot to me. This was written many years ago, but I think you'll see why it's a little bit haunting to read it now. Letter to June Jordan in September. I cannot pass the anniversary of that first news event of childhood without returning to your poem. How from my house I watched, and watched my grief-stricken parents unable to speak. How I leaned into the screen, the chords of the cries, searching for what was recognizable of fingers and thighs, of bracelets and mustaches. Macabre arrangement of bodies with names like our own. I cannot pass without your words. Something about witnessing twice removed, about distances magnified by the shift into language, of dailiness and my own children's vernacular and the machine grinding us all in its jaws. I met a girl from the camp at a reading in Beirut. She asked if we could talk about the life of poetry. Our families are hauled off to the world of the dead, and every day it is on screen. In Gaza, we're watching Ferguson. And in Atlanta, we're watching Jerusalem, watching Minneapolis, watching. Their weapons and their training programs indistinguishable. The word almost flickers for a nanosecond. Here, I note the shelf life of self-censorship, legacy of our era. Some days, poems are scrawled on pieces of cardboard and carried on our shoulders at the protest like martyrs. Here, I should say something about hope. Here, I should say something about living. Thank you.
We have one more big round of applause for Annie and for Lena. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Books are for sale over on my right if you might like to buy some. I know these poets would love to sign them for you and talk with you a little bit. We'll hope to see you back here next week for the reading with Susan Nguyen and Andy Grace. Thanks so much for being here. Be safe. We'll see you soon. Take care.